You're listening to the Undisputed Wrestling Show on AngryMarks.com, featuring Q-Ball Carmichael, Zane Paisley, Drew Skills, and the Morning Star, William Huckabee.
Kev, you ready to call our next guest?
Billy Rock speaking.
Hi, Billy. This is Zane from the Undisputed Wrestling Show. We've also got on with us one of the host of the Undisputed Wrestling Show, Q-Ball Carmichael. I want to introduce you to our listeners. On the air right now, we've got Billy Rock, who is the head of the School of Rock and doing some great training program there, and former Sanity Pro Wrestling star and Chikara veteran. Billy Rock, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing excellent. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic, man.
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for coming on. Now, we've had some conversations on Facebook before, but I want to let our listeners know if they have anything to do with Indiana pro wrestling right now, the scene right now, they probably have something to do with you. You've trained some of my favorites like Dale Patricks, Remy Wilkins, Trip Cassidy, and probably at the top of that list right now, because she's making waves all over the world, Heidi Lovelace. You know, how did you get started in the world of professional wrestling?
Just like everybody else, they've been a fan and they wanted to become a wrestler. So back in 2000, I was flipping through a wrestling magazine, found a school in Florida ran by Dory Funk Jr. Said, hey, why don't I fly down to Florida? And the training was only a week long, but it was basically my foot to get started into wrestling. And then when I came back, I hooked up with the local promoter, Don Basher from WCWO, and then things just kind of took off from there.
So I know Don. I'm the ring announcer, right? WCWO. I do know that you guys still have a great relationship because you send a lot of your graduating students over to see him. How did you flourish from there?
Well, after I got done with the training with him, I wrestled for WCWO for a couple years, and then I just kind of, as all young wrestlers should, you make contact, and you kind of just get on to other shows. So at that time I was hanging out a lot with Sexy Sean Cook, who's also from Lafayette, and he kind of helped me out and pointed me in the right direction of what I should and shouldn't do in pro wrestling.
Well, so how do you teach your students? If they go to your Facebook page, which is Billy Rock and it's ROC, then they some of the pictures that they see on there are from your school. And I think the first thing that you see is where respect is second nature. Obviously, that's a focus of your training.
Absolutely, and that's one of my big teaching points to the students. Nobody likes that jerk in the locker room. Nobody likes that person who thinks they're better than everybody else. Respect everybody. Respect everybody that whatever show you do. Respect everybody from the people that are doing all the behind the scenes stuff also, not just other wrestlers. So we make it a point that before and after every class, we make sure we shake everybody's hand. If somebody shows up, a guest to the building, we make sure that their hand gets shook. And then, I really enforce the don't speak unless you're spoken to rule at the school. So that's kind of where that comes from. Respect is really, really big with me.
Well, and I'm gonna let Q talk here in just a few moments because he's the head trainer at Evolution Pro Wrestling down in North Carolina. So I'm sure you guys are gonna have some great conversation about training. But before I do that, I do want to introduce joining us as one of our co-hosts, the former NWA Continental Champion, Will Huckabee. Will, hello. How are you?
I'm good, Zane. Thank you for putting that out there for everybody.
Okay. So we'll talk about that here in a few minutes after Mr. Rock is done. Billy, I've mentioned your school, School of Rock. It's in Lafayette, Indiana. You're getting ready to have your next class in January, correct?
Correct. January 3rd is the beginning of class number 8.
And you run a kind of an interesting school where it's a 10-month program. It's every Sunday. Once you complete that 10 months, then you can come back and work out whenever you'd like, but you're flexible with other hours for your students, correct?
It's just a per case situation. But yes, my training is, it's for 10 months. We only train for 1 day a week for 4 hours. And it just covers all the absolute basics that you need to know. And we hit ring psychology very, very hard.
Excellent. Well, I've had the opportunity to announce a couple of your recent graduates, Luke Lawson and Ulfric, the King of Wolves. And there's one guy I've got to point out because I've seen this guy around Indiana, young guy around Indiana, filming for years and years. And when I saw him actually wrestle, I was so impressed. You did a great job with him. Sage Phillips, good kid. I just wanted to put him over real quick.
Sage, it's funny that you see, like, I remember him in the Sandy Pro Wrestling shows being, I remember when he asked me about training, I think he was like 15 years old. Mm-hmm. And, it's interesting to see him still stick with it, 3, 4, 5 years later and actually become the wrestler that he's become. So that's neat for me to see too.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to kick it over to Cue Ball Carmichael, speaking with Billy Rock.
Hey, Billy. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I've been hearing a lot of good things about you and your school for a while now, so it's really good to get a chance to talk to you. And, I like your training program, and I'll tell you why I do. I was trained first in Hawaii at Peter Maivia's school, and then I went and spent 8 months with Lou Thez. And, I think I trained guys twice a week for 2 hours each session, which is 4 hours also. The only thing I do in the first couple months is I have a private appointment where I work with them for 2 hours, but that's just because that's me. But, the content of the training is more important than anything else, including time. And the fact that you preach respect, I started 32 years ago, man. So if you didn't respect the locker room, the business, and the boys, you got 8 alive. So I got to tell you, I really have a lot of admiration for your training program and for your motto out there and for some of the people that you graduated. And, obviously you focus a lot on the intangibles, the transitions, the psychology of the wrestling besides just the moves. And, I had a school a few years ago. I trained a couple guys you may have heard of, Christian York and Joey Mercury. So we're trying to duplicate thing. I've only been open for about 4 or 5 months here, but I love what you're doing out there. And I just got to tell you, I'm proud of what you're doing out there because there's not a lot of guys that are teaching that anymore. So, tell me where that respect came from. Who originally taught you to have that mentality in wrestling?
Well, first of all, I really appreciate that coming from you. Cue Ball, I've, definitely, I used to be a big fan of PWI magazines and, not to sound like a big fan, but I do remember seeing your name all over there and I always kept an eye out on certain independent wrestlers' names always popping up on there. And I know yours and York and Matthews and, all the North Carolina guys, always kept up with you guys. So thank you very much. But as far as the respect thing goes, really that was definitely instilled with my father. He was there was like a huge generation gap between him and I. And, that was one of the things that he definitely instilled in me was absolutely respecting everybody. And, then that just kind of carried over in pro wrestling where, you do meet veterans who command respect. And one of the other things too that really brought me up with respect was, you also saw like veterans who kind of, they kind of take advantage of young guys. And I always tell my young guys it's a test when they do that, but some of them are just blatant jerks. Right. And I'd seen it and I was like, I think because if you do that, I feel like then you could potentially be creating potential future jerks. So my motto was, I'm going to show my students respect, and in return, I command the respect back. Now, of course, if somebody gets out of line, I'm not afraid to tell them what they've done wrong, but that's kind of where my reasoning for respect has come into play.
Well, that's, I always tell people respect is originally learned in your household. I guess it was a benefit, that my biological father wasn't around, but my grandfather, who was born and raised in England, and by the time I was born was 60 years old, lived to be 102, was the guy that lived by the word respect. And, there was 60 years between him and me. And, you respected everybody. You respected every elder person. You respected every level of authority, and you respected yourself. And, I think that's a lot of things that are missing today is, because as well as I do, if you give people respect, unless they prove they don't deserve it, but if you give them respect, they respect you back. It makes every relationship easier because respect doesn't always have to be linked with likeness or fondness. But if you respect people, you're always going to have that relationship that you can work with. And if you're like me, when I look at trainees, a guy comes in with a bad attitude that isn't respectful, I'm not going to train him. I don't need the money that bad. I don't care if he's got $10,000 in his hand. That's my name on the back of his jersey forever. So, it's good to hear, and it's good to hear that you learned it in your household, because I always said, that's where it starts. It starts at home. If you weren't taught that growing up, it's going to be hard to understand the concept of respect when you're 20 years old showing up at a wrestling school where it's the main moniker of the school. So, it's fantastic. But, I'm real particular about who I take. I probably shouldn't be, but I realized a long time ago that this wasn't going to be a particularly big profit center for me.
Well, I was just thinking about that the other day, because a lot of people say, your students are very well respected. We appreciate that. And I've really been fortunate with not getting too many jerks that come to my school. Most of them, the worst that I've had is I've had students who talk a lot that I've had to stop. But other than that, I've not had that one person that just came in with, I'm just the greatest thing ever. I've been fortunate with that.
Not even Percy Davis?
No, Percy Davis was one that talked a lot. So, but he was not a jerk, though. He wasn't arrogant or anything. He just talked a lot.
Hey, that's the thing you try to teach them too, is, mouth shut, ears open.
Absolutely.
Some cases, for me, it was Christian York. We talked about it earlier with probably my best friend in the business now that Buddy Landell's gone, unfortunately, Jimmy Cicero, who was another guy that was all over PWI, and him and I trained York and Joey Mercury together, and Mercury was the teacher's pet, and York was the teacher's they put in the corner with a dunce cap on. but it was because he wasn't really arrogant. He came across that way, but he was really just like to talk a lot, and you try to tell him, shut up. Just listen, please. Well, why do I always have to listen? Why can't I tell you what I'm thinking? Because I'm not interested in it. So what's your new class? You got a lot of prospects for it? How's it look?
We have 15 students signed up so far for this year.
Beautiful.
But I usually don't get excited until the very first day of class. So right now they've all gone through tryouts, and there's some potential there. I've got some guys that are of size that I'd like to start training more. Just because in my past, I've had I usually get smaller, medium-sized guys. I want to start getting bigger guys to the school. And then, the whole 2016 seems very promising. We're actually going to be running, four live shows, with my students who have graduated. Most of those shows are strictly for my students. And then, we've got a live web series that's going to debut, January 1st. And then we've got, I'm still in the works with this, but it looks like it's almost done. There'll actually be, I found somebody who wants to do a documentary on the school. So they're going to film, the current class from day one till the first match, which is in November, the first Sunday in November. So I'm actually excited to see that kind of play out. So a lot of cool stuff's going on this year.
That's awesome, man. You know, hard work, the harder you work, the luckier you get the breaks. You know that, whether it's in the business, being on the road, or it's doing the things right at the school and stuff like that. You put the time in and it comes, but it sounds like a fantastic year for you. Let me ask you a question, Billy. Do you get let's say you have students that graduated last year or the year before. Do they come to the school and ever help with the training?
Trip Cassidy, who was actually my very first student, he comes by all the time. And then Percy Davis also comes by a lot. I get several people that come in and come out, former students. And they do help out with the training a little bit. They're kind of my, basically they're verifying everything I'm saying, which
right.
is kind of good to have. Because sometimes, you know, I love it when I feel like I've told a student several times, hey, don't do this, don't do this. They don't listen. And then all of a sudden somebody else comes in and tells the exact same thing. And then all of a sudden that light bulb goes off. And sometimes I guess they just need to hear it from somebody else to make sure it was correct. I don't know. So
no, you are exactly right. I used to go up to Bone Breakers that ran a school in Baltimore, and my first school was in Alexandria, Virginia, when I lived in Virginia. And I would go up there and talk to his students. He would come talk to mine, and you could see the light bulb come on when they were hearing the same thing from him that I was telling them. And when I went up there, it was that way with them too. And I think there's something to be said for that, because if they hear it twice from two different people, they're like, okay, this is real. This is how it's done. You know, there's maybe a little bit of doubt, or I'm not sure. Does he train like everybody else? And I also think, and this is what I found with my students before, is that when I brought them back after they graduated and had matches and they would stop in while I was training, I would have them, I'd say, listen, go talk to them about this, this, or this. And I found that made those former students who were coming back in and teaching a little bit to the new ones, I found that just made them so much better and gave them so much more confidence out there, that it seemed like after they had done that they all started to excel. I remember Joey Mercury when he was Joey Matthews and Christian York. We brought him back after they graduated for about 2 or 3 months. They would stop on a regular basis, and boom, they were out there a year, and they got signed by WCW and went down there in a developmental deal. And I think that is a really important thing, is getting the former students, the ones that have graduated, obviously, and are out there wrestling, to come in and work a little bit with those kids, and then do that with these kids maybe a year or two from now. I just find that I think it just does something. You know, when you know it and apply it in the ring, it's one thing, but when you can teach it in a practical application, it just, I don't know what it does. It just makes everybody who does that seem to go to a little bit higher level.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, another benefit to that too is, I very rarely do shows anymore. I like to stay in Lafayette with my family, and that's the main reason why I opened up the school, so I could stay in wrestling and do what I love to do, and that is teach how to be a wrestler. But like when Chip Cassidy comes, he is wrestling every weekend, or, you know, a few nights a week or whatever. And so, like that, he's doing it right now. I used to do it, but I don't know what's going on in the Indiana scene as much as I should. I don't know what's going on outside of Indiana as much as I should, but he does. And you're absolutely right. He's taking things from out there. He's coming back. He's taking my things and showing them, you know, some other things also. So.
Well, and yeah. Billy, another cool thing that you do is bring in guest trainers. Like in the past, you've had Chris Hero there, Colt Cabana, Jimmy Jacobs, and one of my favorites, Drake Younger, all there. So that's another interesting thing that you do to bring in outside sources like that.
Yeah, one of the things I just believe, for my training, I trained with Dory Funk Jr., then I trained with, a local in Indianapolis by Don Basher. Then I did seminars with Terry Taylor and Rob Van Dam and Tracy Smothers. And I took everything from everybody, and then I created my own me. And my students, I know when they graduate, they're always like, can I do this seminar? And I'm like, absolutely do that seminar, because I'm only teaching pro wrestling through the eyes of Billy Rock, and that's just my variation of it. There's so many variations of pro wrestling. So learn as much as you can from everybody. So I definitely encourage that with my students.
That's a great attitude to have. I do the same thing. I'm fortunate. There's some really good places in the Carolinas. There's CWF in Winston-Salem and AML, which runs WrestleCade also, and up in Tidewater, Damian Wayne trains. And, we're having a 3-day camp in March, and I do this every year, and I usually have about between 10 and 20 people that come down for the 3 days. And, Damian is bringing his whole class down for the seminar. So it's kind of like his students are going to get to work with my students, but we're going to have people from all over. We got Florida, Alabama involved. We had a kid come out from Indiana last time, and we really just had a lot of luck with it. But, all it is, once again, is I'm going to tell Damian's students exactly what he told them, and he's going to do it for mine. It's going to be that light bulb moment for a lot of guys. Yep. So I think that's important too. And, it's like I think, I started running shows. I had my first one. I did the Buddy Landell Memorial Cup because he was truly my best friend in this world. And, we had Tracy Smothers do a seminar that day, and we had 22 or 24 guys come, which in the Carolinas is sort of unheard of. I mean, at Harley Race 3 years ago, we had 40 people, but that's Harley Race. But typically in the Carolinas, a guy might draw. Al Snow drew 20 3 years ago. But I mean, it's typically 10 or 12, the same guys go to all the seminars, the ones that are good. But I encourage my guys, if there's a seminar, throw 2 or 3 of your boys in the car, get your 2 or 3 of your students to jump in there and go out there and listen to this guy. If it's somebody like the people that you mentioned that know what the heck they're doing. And, Tracy just puts on an incredible seminar. It's just crazy good. And, Al Snow might make you think different, but sometimes it's good to think different, so, it's great to get out there. And, there's a lot of, and I know you know this, so I'm not telling you anything you don't know, Billy, but there's a lot of guys out there that don't want their students going to the seminars because I don't think they're confident that what they're teaching is really, the universal quality of professional wrestling, psychology, transitions, doing moves, not for the sake of doing moves, but putting them in a sequence that is like connecting the dots. And after you connect the dots in the exact right order, you end up with a Picasso at the end. And so a lot of people don't try to encourage that. And another fantastic thing to hear from you is that you're encouraging guys to get out there and go to seminars, and doing the right things as a trainer to school. I mean, there's not a lot of us out there, doing the right thing with these guys, and you definitely are. And so, I'm proud to call you a brother in school owning, and I'm going to hit you up on Facebook when we're done and send you out a friend request, because I don't think we are on Facebook, are we?
I don't think we are either.
Me and 3/4
posts.
My rants or my posts?
Either one.
Well, while we're talking about social media, why don't you let our listeners know how they can follow you on social media and plug the School of Rock website also, please.
So on Facebook, you just need to look up Billy Rock, and that is ROC. Just look that up. You'll find me. You can find the School of Rock Wrestling Academy also on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter at SORBilly. And if you want to find out more about the school, we got a website. It's called schoolofrock.biz, B-I-Z. You'll find out all the information about the school and what some of the students have been up to, and some of our past guests, and what you're going to get out of the school.
Beautiful.
Will, did you have any quick questions for Billy Rock?
No, I don't. I think you guys covered about everything, man. It was a great interview. I'm glad I got on to hear it.
Well, Billy, thank you so much. And as I said, I'm a big fan of a lot of the guys that you trained: Remy Wilkins, Sue Jackson, Percy Davis, Trip Cassidy, Dale Patricks, Sage Phillips now, and Heidi Lovelace. You're doing a great job down there, or up there in Lafayette. We appreciate you coming on with us. And are you still taking applicants for the next session starting January 3rd?
I've actually closed it off for the last few weeks. Because by now they still have to do a tryout. So right now I'm just focusing on the 15 that are signed up. So my next class won't start till anybody else that signs up won't be till 2017. Due to my real life schedule, I only have room for one class a year. So that's unfortunately that's just one of the downfalls of how the school runs.
Well, we're looking forward to checking out the upcoming documentary and the web series. It should be a great time.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me on here, guys. It was a blast.
Thanks, brother. Enjoyed it, man. Talk soon.
Awesome job, guys. It's a cram-packed full show tonight. We've got talking to some of our favorite people already on the Undisputed Wrestling Show tonight. We've talked to Wise Guy Jimmy Cicero and the School of Rock's Billy Rock. Coming up next, we've got Tom Van Zandt of TVZ. Kev, are you ready to give him a call?
I'm going to sit back and enjoy Will doing his thing.